All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. Well, good afternoon. Better weather. This past week was hot, right? Hopefully, the heat wave is over. Actually, it's kind of like the Berkeley area. It sort of gets like that until October or something like that. But I know that some of you are sitting here going, "What heat wave?" Like how many of you guys are from an area where like 90 plus weather is like during the summer is like normal? Okay. So all of you guys, just what do you think about us? What do you think about Bay Area people where like anything above 80, we don't know what to do. We're like, oh my God, it's so hot, Want to faint, want to cancel school, and yeah, just give us a, just give a 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay, so there we go. Yeah, we're spoiled. But you will join us very soon. You'll be like, it's so hot, it's 80, So anyway, we're going to continue on with our Exodus series. We're going to be talking about just, today is going to be that famous scene of the calling from the burning bush. But I wanted to sort of do a review again of this. So we talked about this situation where there's two paths, the path of Pharaoh, conspiracy of death versus a conspiracy of love. And then, now let's just kind of continue on. So color changes here, but here's a continuation of that path of death, Egypt, in a way. So this Moses now becomes, let's see, like this looks like Moses, some sort of Pharaoh-looking thing, So he goes, all right, I'm going to lead our people. I'm going to rescue our people. So then he goes into, in a way, he tries to rescue, right? He goes in there, and he goes, okay, I'm going to rescue the person who's being beaten. I'm going to be a I mean, just think about it. What does he seem? He sees himself as the most qualified revolutionary alive in Egypt. And actually, he's right. Right? Among all the Hebrews, who has the most power? Among all the Hebrews, who has the most education and has an influence in the right place at the right time? And he goes, that's me. It's me. So then he goes in there, and then what he receives is a harsh no, rejection. So boom, right? He is now kind of a weird proportion, but he's now running. He runs away. Right? There's a painful rejection, and now he's an exile and a sojourner. Just maybe that Pharaoh hat is gone now. He threw it away. Right? In an exile and a sojourner in a foreign land. That's where we find Moses in today's text. Since that time, actually, what has happened is that decades have passed. Maybe for the first 5 years, actually, maybe around here, first 5 years or so, he was really angry. Maybe angry at Pharaoh, angry at the Israelite guy, that Israelite guy who said, "Who are you going to kill me?" Also angry at the tattletale Israelite, the Hebrew that told on him to Pharaoh, and now Pharaoh wants to kill. Like angry at the whole situation. But now, what has happened? There's this kind of 40 years, 4 decades, man, of life, And where he is now is he has now, gotten old. This is a beard, right? He's a shepherd. The staff has changed from the scepter of Pharaoh to, and these are sheep, I guess. Right? Yeah. And has a wife, has 2 kids. Like that. He's settled down. He has a job of sheep herding his father-in-law's sheep. It's not even his own sheep. Life is different. And I wonder, you wonder so this, as he thinks about those days, as he thinks about these days, you wonder how he sees it, his confidence, his self-identity. as the most qualified revolutionary, those thoughts are naturally far, far away. I mean, they're 4 decades away. And probably his recollections of Egypt is probably kind of faint. I mean, it's been 4 decades. The memory that he used to think of himself as the man of destiny, probably as he thinks about that, you can kind of imagine him like chuckling a little bit, shaking his head. Oh yeah, those young and foolish days. Life has killed the dream I dreamed. Life has killed the dream I dreamed. Da 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 da. That. Yeah, life does that. Life does that, man. And that's where we find Moses. When we see this quintessential scene when God calls Moses. Now, Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. By the way, there's multiple names that you wonder, like, oh, I thought his name was Ruel or something like that from last chapter. It's just like Lord of the Rings. They have multiple names. Cephas, Peter, okay, anyway. So, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. Okay, wait, hold on a second. Like, this is when God shows up to Moses. I think you have to I don't know if that's a little bit jarring. If you've been keeping track, it should be a little bit jarring, because those of us who want to serve God, we really need to grapple with this very strange picture, that the fact that God shows up to Moses at this point in Moses' life. Why didn't God show up earlier? You know what I mean? When Moses was in his prime. This is way past his prime. But God shows up now. And the short answer to that, why God would show up at this time, is that we have a certain picture of ourselves that we hold on to, And in order for God to use us, that picture, in a way, needs to die. It needs to be burned away, in a sense, right? Moses had a certain picture of himself as the qualified revolutionary, but through all that Moses went through, that picture became pretty much non-existent, right? That picture went away. That self-motivated picture went away. And maybe God did too good of a job, because Moses is like, when God says, now you can do this, Moses is like, I'm not going, right? So God has to actually argue back, and there's like an argument that we're going to go through next week. So there's this back and forth. God's like, no, you're doing it. He gets angry at Moses eventually, but he has to convince Moses, right? So I think for us, what's the picture of yourself that you cling to? There's a certain spin, a picture that we cling to, that we put on ourselves, right? Like, others might be smart, but I'm more diligent. That's a little spin, a picture. Others might be more talented, but I'm the one who's like the real servant around here. Others might be nicer to people, but once, people kind of get to know me, I am loyal, man. Right? Yeah, my face and my initial, I'm awkward and I'm mean, but I'm a good friend. Those people who are nice on the front end, they're shallow. We have all these like little spins that we have, right? This story, this picture of ourselves. And in a way, these pictures, they need to die before God can use us. This certain way in which we go, okay, this is me. I mean, that was my experience, right? Freshman year, when I got into that math 50, what is that, 54, is it? Linear algebra, yeah. I realized that I had a picture. My mom told me I'm genius. I was like, yeah, math and science. You guys know my ridiculous class schedule, right? All core classes. And I realized I'm not that smart. That picture crumbled big time. It just went, And maybe some of you, sophomore year, since sophomore year, you've begun to live with your peers, and you realize, oh, even when people get to know me, I'm not that nice, I am not that loyal. That picture crumbles. I'm actually very petty. From the beginning to the end, I'm petty, Here's news. That picture crumbling, more is coming in your life. There's more opportunities. Your whole life is going to be a series of those kind of pictures crumbling and crumbling. Many of us have really dumb fantasies about personal greatness. Something that we picked up when we were 15 or something like that. When we watched a movie or read a novel and says, wow, I'm like that character, I'm going to be smart but not nerdy. Like that character, that's me, That's the persona that I've taken on. Maybe some of us have experienced some rejection, some high school rejection, and decided, you know what? I am that tragic hero who was trying to prove himself or herself. That's my life story, and that's the picture that I'm going to live out, These pictures, they need to crumble. And I tell you, let them all crumble. I want to really encourage you, let them crumble, because there's something, after all that picture crumbles, there's something that's going to remain, which is the person that God is interested in using. That something is going to remain. That a different person will remain. And in a sense, I think this picture of this burning bush where there's a fire, but the bush is not being consumed, it's a powerful imagery that really captures what I've been talking about, what actually happened to Moses, during all these years in Midian. Fire usually consumes. The Bible talks about God as a consuming fire, in fact. But in this case, there's something in the midst of that fire that is not consumed. And I think that's a snapshot of what happened to Moses. Through the difficulty of the past 4 decades, the dross, the impurities have been burned away, and his impatience got burned away. And this picture of himself as the most qualified revolutionary, it burned away. And what remained? What remained? What was not consumed? It was the Moses, the shepherd. The part of Moses that we saw in the beginning, actually, last chapter, where the 7 daughters, he rescues the seven daughters from the mean shepherds at the well, and then he went ahead and took care of the animals as well. Like somehow instead of going, oh yeah, check this out, he goes, oh, let me help you, and then that Moses got purified. Moses became the shepherd through the 40 years. And that's exactly what he needed to become in order for him to lead the Israelites. In the movie Prince of Egypt, Charlton Heston, whatever movie, movie actually ends when Moses splits the Red Sea and rescues the Israelites. And then, as they come to the other side, right? They say, Shina Adonai, whatever. That song that they sing, the freedom song. Yeah, and then the movie ends and the credits roll. Like, wow, happy ending, right? Feel good ending. Basically, that's the end of the movie, but biblically, it goes on for 4 more decades. And it's painful. It is painful. Israelites are homeless, and they're wandering through the wilderness, and the Israelites were the biggest whiners and complainers ever. And it was so hard to lead the Israelites for Moses that later on, Moses tells God, he tells God, he goes, God, have I given birth to these people? Like, this burden is too heavy for me. He actually asked God, kill me right now. Just kill me. I mean, that's how hard it was. Moses really needed to learn patience. I think he would have killed the Israelites and killed himself or something like that if it wasn't for this time period where he got purified. Numbers 12 says that Moses was the meekest man on the earth up to that point. He was the most humble man on earth. Well, in Egypt he wasn't, though. But in order to lead the Israelites through the wilderness, Moses needed to be the humble shepherd. And that's what happened. The fire consumed the impurities, and what remained was the core of Moses, the Moses that God could use. Hebrews 12 talks about how God will shake the world so that the unshakable will remain. He says he will shake the heavens and the earth so that the unshakable will remain. And then the chapter ends with, for our God is a consuming fire. It's the same idea. The imagery of God is a consuming fire that shakes things up so that the unshakable things emerge. God is not interested in seeing humanity grovel and being beaten down. He wants the best of you to emerge for the work ahead. So there's so much of our good work that we do. For those of us here who are involved in ministry, I think all of us should be, all Christians should be involved in ministry. We believe in the priesthood of all believers. So much of the good work of sharing the gospel or even reading the Bible, even something as personal as that, it's so intermingled with different pictures of ourselves, vain pictures of ourselves, It's mixed with pride and narcissism, and like somehow even in the midst of prayer, we're like looking at ourselves praying and saying, wow, I'm spiritual. It's so crazy. When people are looking, we work harder, especially for singles, man. When the opposite gender is present, suddenly serving God with fervor, like with that extra oomph, like, yeah, right? I don't want to say, okay, I don't want to say that's evil, that's so wrong, okay? So I think it's just part of reality of our brokenness, but still, I think we can still be involved in the process of God purifying us. Let God purify you. Many Christians think, as long as I have gifts, I have some gifts. Many are impatient to use it right away. Here I am, I'm talented in this area, come on, let me at them. Well, and then oftentimes there's this disdain for character training. There's this disdain for long-term character training. I think that's wrong. I think Moses, the picture of Moses, and this strange picture of God coming at Moses during this time, as well as we see other aspects, in the scripture of God preparing someone and training someone and making sure that our character is in line with our gifts. There's a prayer that Pastor Ed prays that I actually also pray myself, which is, Lord, keep me as low as my character. Don't let my giftings and what I do outpace my character, because that's just bad news. So if you're going through some times of difficulty, even times of spiritual dryness, if that's where you are right now, man, hang on. Hang on. If you tried hard in ministry and you try to rescue people from Pharaoh's path and people don't respond, people reject you in fact, and people treat you like you're crazy, hang on. Trust God's leading through those times. Because those painful moments can be the fire that burns away the ulterior motivations of narcissism that we have. When all those motivations burn away, what remains? What's not consumed? It's that part of you that's motivated by the gospel. Like you try hard and then nobody responds. It's like, it's painful. Well, let that burn away the narcissism. And what will remain is that part of us that will say, gospel is worth it. Let that emerge. And so I want to really encourage you to submit to that process. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. So this thing, let me see this great sight. Actually, not really. This sight, until he gets near, he doesn't really see it. Like if you think about the description of this fire, it's not blue fire with surreal sound effects. That's how like Prince of Egypt made it out, like It's like, what is that? And it's like a blue light. No, it's not. It was just a regular looking fire and natural bushfires are very common back then. But what was happening was like Moses looking at it, and the bush it's on fire, but the bush it's not being consumed. Right? He notices that. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys look at campfires. All the guys do. Like, there's something about guys and fires where we can stare at it for like 30 minutes straight without saying anything, And the wood of the fire gets consumed really slowly, You don't see it like disappearing. You're just like, You have to stare at it for a while, right? So Moses must have lingered and he must have looked. And he said, wait a minute, this is strange, And then when he turned aside to see, and it seems like when he did that, like when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see. So it was as if God was waiting for that moment. Like it was just there. And then when Moses noticed, he goes, okay, it's not being consumed. And then he moves toward it, turns toward it, and then God calls Moses at that moment, you know. Now, some people say, if God wants my attention, if God wants to call me for his work or something like that, let lightning strike my head or something, you know. Let something drastic. We're waiting for that. Then he can tell me what he wants me to do. But he doesn't, this emblematic calling of Moses doesn't start off with a lightning strike on Moses' head. It starts by Moses looking at a fire, normal looking bush fire that doesn't seem to get consumed. It's weird. A weird fire. You know? I mean, one thing we can learn is that Moses had some kind of roominess in his heart, right? To be curious and wonder like that. You know? Another thing that we can know is that Moses is probably not cynical or bitter person anymore. For 4 decades, that has been driven out. Because an embittered person never wonders about anything. You know, an embittered person doesn't have a room in his heart to wonder. But Moses has room to wonder. So he approaches and he wants to see more. You know. So we got to wonder about that, right? How are you doing in that area of wondering? Or are you curious? Do you have time to wonder? I guess we do have time, Okay, we do have time, but do you have room in your heart to wonder? You know, to reflect, to ask the question, what is this? Right? To draw nearer and toward how God might be working. And as Moses drew near, there is a call. Moses, Moses. There's a personal calling, the experience of his name being called. Then he said, do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. This is the experience, I think, that many Christians have, that many of us had. You know, this experience of hearing a message. You know, you heard this message before. You might have heard this very message before, even this message. Common bushfire, yeah, right? Common sight. And then for me, I remember I was sitting in this room. We were facing that way, but, I was sitting in it. A lot of those burning bush moments happened right here for me, too. And the message started to hit me. And people that I saw living out the message, it was sort of an unusual sight. Like a bunch of young people that are really fervently trying to live out the message. It's like, what? Sunday message is supposed to be you listen to it, you say amen to it, and you're supposed to go home and forget about it. But these people reflect about it. These people try to live it out. What a strange sight. And then the message started to hit me, and the room, in a way, emptied out. And heard the message addressing me personally. Found myself being addressed personally. My name being called out by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I realized, man, I'm standing on holy ground. That is holy ground. And if you are here right now, experiencing that, I know what that feels like. That's holy ground. I really hope that all of you can have this burning bush moment with God. But there are 2 things that really stops this. The first one is the whatever attitude. It's so powerful. Whatever is the wonder stopper, right? Someone could be telling you the most important thing in the world, and you say, whatever. Or internally you say that, whatever. That's it. You're not going to investigate. It's so powerful. Sadly, this whatever attitude is more common for people who grew up in the church, actually. Say, yeah, I already know this. I already heard this message. I already know, whatever. And you just let the burning bush pass by. You don't turn aside toward it. Another wonder stopper is, you guys all know this, distractions, right? Modern day distractions, our modern life. Weapons of mass distraction. I like this. I found this online, right? Yeah. These are bombs. They are shaped as bombs. Oh, I didn't even notice that until now. Okay. Bombs dropping, right? Yeah, our modern life is filled with 1,000 different distractions, I don't need to talk about this. I don't need to convince you of this, right? I mean, man, even in a conversation, as I'm conversing, there's a ding, ding, and somehow you can ignore it though. Ding, brr, and then there's a vibration too. Brr, brr. burp, burp, you know? Can you imagine, like, if we're actually having a conversation? Let's say I'm having a conversation with Ben right here, you know, across the table. I'm like, hey, and then Eddie comes along and he goes, burp, 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 you know? You know, it's like, shut up, right? So it's just like this kind of like modern day distraction. Yeah. Are you gonna have room to wonder about things? Like, what was that about? Right? Just when you think, wow, that conversation that I had, that message, what I saw, I need to really think about that. And there's a ding, burp, you know, and then it goes, I gotta watch that video clip first, and then I'll think about it later. Of course, you never do, right? I mean, we really need to fight against that. Man, I hope that we can fight for our sanity, fight for that sanity space. And I think we need to be very intentional about fighting for that space where we can have room. So, as you look back at your life, maybe you can see this progression that Moses went through, you know, maybe even through some disappointments. You came to a point where you saw a strange sight, you know, maybe through some difficulties, you know. But still, there you go, you see a strange sight. Maybe a bunch of guys who seem to love each other. A college group that seems to take God seriously. You know, like, what is this? A college group that doesn't seem flirtatious. You're like, what a strange and great sight, you know? What is this, right? That's crazy. And instead of saying, well, those are just those Christian types, those are the type of people, and then it's kind of turning away to watch another YouTube clip, some people actually linger long enough. Some people linger long enough to go, wait a minute, these people are actually intelligent people. Why would they believe this? Or to say, hey, my friends are changing in ways that I haven't seen before. That was actually the testimony of my wife, Sarah. She was a bad church kid. You know what I'm talking about? Been going to church, came to college. I can share this freely. You don't have to feel nervous because she shared this very publicly already. So she came to college vowing, I'm not going to step into church. There's no way, right? I've been growing up in the church all my life. I am here to party. I'm here to just like fall off the deep end and never come back. So then freshman year, boom. She does this with a bunch of friends that she like who want to do the same. Like, yeah, let's do that together. And boom, you know, they jump in. But then like 3 of her friends ended up coming to our church here, and she didn't. And she was like, "You crazy," you know. And then they go to a retreat, and then they come back and they say, "We repented. We repented." And she's like, "Yeah, well, okay, whatever," you know. Heard that before. And then this group of 3 friends started to change in a way that was so drastic that my wife Sarah is like, what is going on here? I've never seen this. I've been in church all my life. I've just not seen something like this. You know, they're having one-on-one Bible studies with some leader, and she doesn't know, like, what's going on here? Their every other word being a cuss word became like every 10th word and then eventually disappeared, you know, that kind of thing. Like what is happening? It's a strange sight. The world is filled with burning bushes. We need to create room in our hearts to turn aside and see. Can you see it? So God starts to speak to Moses. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings. And I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. So these words that I sort of like made into blue, these are actually kind of interesting because these are actually very parallel to the daughter of Pharaoh. Do you see that, right? I've seen her the cry, the baby was crying, right? I've come down into the water to deliver them, bring them out of the water, so that whole thing the daughter of Pharaoh did. So this is God like describing the situation. And maybe as God is saying this, Moses' old memories of the revolutionary memories have been stirred up, you know. He's going, finally, you know, finally. Oh, it's about time, God, that you heard. I heard 40 years ago. What took you so long? You know, like Finally. And then he says, I have come. Right? Now behold, has come to me, and I have also seen, where is it? I have come down, yeah. I have come down to deliver them. And Moses is like, yes, exactly. And then Moses realizes this is a total setup. Because it says, come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. He's like, what? Right? Like, it's a total setup. Like, I don't know. I was trying to figure out like how to like analogize this in my own experience. I think the closest, it is nothing close to this, but closest that I can come to this was we have actually a lodge in the Sierras toward Lake Tahoe area. There's actually a lodge that our church built. We just bought just land, and then we built a lodge because we said we need a retreat site, some place, a getaway place that we can get away to. And it's an awesome place. You guys should go there if you haven't been there. And the vision was cast. We're like, we should do this. And, how many Airbnbs are we going on as a small group? Like, this will pay for itself. Come on, let's do this. We're like, yes, yeah, like let's do it. And then Pastor Ed says, Daniel, you're the foreman. And I'm like, what? Right? He goes, yeah. But Pastor Ed, you understand that only thing I know how to do is hammer a nail. Like I don't know anything about construction except hammering a nail. And he goes, yeah, I know. Who else is going to be? It's you, right? So then it was that experience, But it got built, okay? Eventually it got built, but that's another story. It's another story, right? So he said, come, I will send you. And Moses' response is Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? I mean, of course, he's saying, who am I? Like, he's totally insecure. And actually, the rest of chapter 3 and the next half of chapter 4, Moses is arguing with God. And God's response is, he said, but I will be with you, and this will be the sign for you that I have sent you, that when you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. He says, this will be a sign. Okay, you want security? I'll give you a sign. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Now, what kind of sign is that, right? It's like saying, like, Pastor Ed, how can I do that? This is how I know you can do it. When this construction is completed, we'll all be celebrating together. It's like, how? That's the very thing that I'm doubting. I mean, but notice, like for God, this is a sign. Because God, being timeless, already sees that day. And he's saying, oh, there it is. There's a sign right there. There it is. Moses, I see it. And he's like, whoa. So for God, that's a certainty. And it's not because he has some crystal ball, though, to look into the future with. But the core of God's reply is this: I will be with you. So I know I will accomplish this. Not only is he timeless, he's saying, I'll be with you. I will accomplish it. So to the person who says, I can't run this race, God. I can't run. I am injured. It's like God is saying to that person, well, you'll be with me at the finish line. I can see it because you know what? I'll carry you. I know I'll do this. I will carry you. So that's a guarantee. Now I think we can really relate to this as Christians. Come, it says, come, I will send you. That whole picture, come, I will send you. That is the Christian calling, right? And the parallel of it is the Great Commission. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. We're being sent, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, and again, the same promise, I am with you always to the end of the age, right? And that's the same promise. Who are the people that God is sending you to? As you think about that, we often feel like, oh my gosh, is it like my classmates, my dorm mates, my workplace people, coworkers? And we often feel like that. Who am I? Oh God, who am I? And the same promise is given. I'll be with you. I am with you always. So not only does God save us, in conclusion, I want to talk about this. Not only does God save us, but He has an awesome, awesome purpose for our lives. To be involved in His grand redemption plan. So let God prepare you. Don't be so anxious to make sense of everything. I know that some of us might be going through some difficult times. It's the wilderness. It's the Midianite desert. Don't be so anxious to try to figure out what God is exactly doing. Don't be so anxious about your qualifications or your lack of qualifications. God knows what it will take to prepare you for the grand task ahead, for the work of God that He has prepared for you ahead of you. D.L. Moody summarized Moses' life in this way, and I think it's really awesome. Moses spent the first third of his life thinking he's somebody. Then he spent the next third of his life learning that he's nobody. Then he spent the last third of his life showing what God can do through somebody who realizes that he's nobody. That's nice, right? Yeah. If you think about Moses' life, the different fires in his life, even the mundane routine of herding sheep that he had to do. Moses didn't know at that time that God was shaping him, that God was training him. So even as you go through some times of difficulty, even sadness, even loneliness, and feeling directionless and things like that, let that process burn away the impurities and let God train you to be the person that will be unshakable. Right? I just wanted to spend, before we have the praise band come up, there's a sheet for you on your seats to help you process and to think through some of your thoughts and reflections about this message. It's for you to keep. We're not going to turn it in, so just honestly just reflect about it and think about just different prompts and how this message has spoken to you. And afterwards, the praise band will come up and lead us in our final song.